All right. A very good morning to all of you and welcome. We are delighted to have you join us today for this workshop on building a diverse, robust AI workforce. I really want to take a moment to thank our four distinguished speakers today, Professor Panchanathan from the National Science Foundation, Professor Sandeep Verma, Mr. Chris Gopalakrishnan, and Professor Govind Rangarajan. I'll do introductions again, but thank you so much for gracing the occasion. Welcome to all the participants who've come from all over India. We have people from as far away as Guwahati in the northeast to Kerala down south. So we really have a diverse set of institutions participating, and we're very pleased that you could all join us in person. And of course, the people who've flown all the way from the United States and landed at 4 a.m. this morning. So thank you very much, Nitish, if you're here. I can't see you, but you're somewhere here. Thank you so much. I'll talk a little bit about the genesis of the workshop, but I'd really like to give as much time as possible to our four provocateurs. As we know, India is getting ready to celebrate 75 years of independence, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. We're also celebrating the special relationship between India and the United States. This is a strategic partnership between the world's two largest democracies built on shared values. A few months ago, Prime Minister Modi and President Biden, on the sidelines of the Quad Summit, launched a new initiative called ISET, the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies, that's going to be jointly led by the National Security Councils of both countries. This is going to focus on areas such as artificial intelligence, semiconductors, quantum computing, 5G and 6G, biotech and space. So as we talk about all these emerging technologies, what's critical is the workforce. So we do need to have everybody trained, the young people coming into graduate schools today, the folks who are already in the workforce. So this workshop is going to look at ways we can build a more diverse, robust AI workforce where it cuts across all sectors of the economy. And as I said, thank you again very much. This is a different sort of workshop, so we'll have very few talks. I know all of you are academics and I know you like to give lectures, but this is really a visioning session. We want you, in each session, we have 4 breakouts. We want you to do a deep dive, talk about where we can have common solutions, where we can have synergies, what are the key priorities and how can we get there? So not just the challenges, but is there a roadmap for a solution? Who needs to be part of the solution as well? And how we can all work together, industry, academia, US, India, to really address the challenge of building a truly diverse and robust AI workforce. I'm going to now request our dignitaries to come to the stage. We are delighted to welcome back Professor Panchanathan to his alma mater, the Indian Institute of Science. I'm sure you're thrilled to be back. He's also the director of the US National Science Foundation, and he's on a whirlwind trip to India. I then invite Dr. Sandeep Verma, Secretary, Science and Engineering Research Board, to join us. And Dr. Verma also happens to be on the governing board of the Indo-US Science and Technology Forum that's organizing this with Itihasa Research and Digital and IISc. I'd then like to invite Mr. Chris Gopalakrishnan, co-founder Infosys and chairman Axelo Ventures. Thank you so much. And then, of course, our host for today, the director of the Indian Institute of Science, Professor Govind Rangarajan as well. So thank you all for joining us today. And again, just as introduction, this is an event that's being launched by the Indo-US Science and Technology Forum, a bilateral entity with Itihasa Research and Digital. We have Krishna Narayan and Daya Sindhu in the front, and Rajesh Sundaresan, he's right here from the Indian Institute of Science. So thank you all so much for making this happen. The structure for this event is simple. I'm going to ask our 4 distinguished speakers. You're in a session called Provocateurs. So we really want you to challenge this community, give us a call to action, and share your experiences. So we'll start with 5 minutes each, and then I'll have a set of questions. So please go ahead. I'll start with Professor Panchanathan, and we have mics here.
Basically, in the US, there is a particular weekend called Homecoming Weekend, where all the folks come home to their institution. And it's a very moving experience because you get to meet your fellow classmates potentially, but more importantly, you are in the environment that you actually grew up. So as I was driving today, I was reminiscing the time I was doing a workshop class. Of course, not to miss the AMS, which is where we spent a lot of time too, eating good food. And then the very first thing that happened when I came to IISc was enter this building. As a fresh undergraduate student, you come to the registrar's office. So it brings wonderful, wonderful memories to be back on campus and to see that the campus, while it's doing unbelievable things, is yet maintained that history and that presence without changing much of that is really a phenomenal feat. So first I want to congratulate the director and IISc and all the people that made it happen over the years. It's truly a remarkable thing, not to be taken for granted. So that's what I start off with. So you said provocateur. What I would do in this, at least preliminary remarks, is share with you a few things because it's focused on AI. When I came to NSF 2 years ago, we were about to launch this concept of AI institutes. And these institutes were meant to bring unbelievable AI concepts to the forefront. And these institute conceptualizations were much more about how do we bring academia, industry, foundations, communities, and international partners, all of them working together around some thematic topics that actually can advance not only AI, but what AI can do for humanity, society, economy, and a whole host of things, addressing grand challenge problems. So basically, if you look at the United States, and that's true for India too, if you look at the United States, much of the prosperity is particularly relative to technology and companies then birthing out of that and industries being located are concentrated on a few areas of the United States, right? And which is a good thing because it brings unbelievable synergies of purpose, synergies and sort of cross-workings and things of that nature. So that's not wrong. I call it necessary, but not sufficient condition. So therefore, when I came to NSF, I said, when this program was being put together, I just said, I'm going to rebrand this as AI in every state. Okay? Because even as we start off on this new program, we have to ensure that AI talent, that is, because I'm a fundamental believer that talent and ideas are democratized and is in every place, rural, urban, all states, across the broad socioeconomic demographic, and across the rich diversity, in this case, in the United States, across the rich diversity, whether it is Hispanic or African American or any background that you might be, that talent and ideas are democratized. And therefore, how do we ensure that talent and ideas that are democratized are inspired, nurtured, motivated, and brought to life, no matter where they are? And how do we ensure that innovation can be present everywhere? And I have this slogan that I use, called innovation anywhere, opportunities everywhere. That should be the focus of how we are moving forward. So if you take a sort of a scorecard of how we are doing relative to that, I would say that we are not doing that great. I'm talking about the United States. You can assess it for India yourself, because I've been out of India for a long time. So for me to do anything in that regard will be inappropriate at best. So, what I said was, what we said was that these institutes, even as we are thinking about them, have to span all the 50 states and such that it can be a K-12 inspiration, it can be a community college inspiration, it can be an industry inspiration, it can be an entrepreneurial inspiration, yes, it can be a higher education and research inspiration. Because somehow that AI is only for the few and it's all about research is a misguided way of approaching the problem. So if you're all in this together, then I think that's first thing that I would say is we have to shed our feeling that somehow more technology and more this and that is what is going to solve the problems or create new opportunities. So that's the first thing that we did. The second thing that I said that we should do is often people will say, oh, but there's only a $100 million program per year, and that's the scale that we had for several years. So with $100 million, each center being $20 million, how can we really span the whole nation with this kind of a program? Usually that's the thing that people keep saying, that's only that much money. And I say that money is not how you talk about issues. I always say good ideas will bring resources. So focus on good ideas, don't focus on resources. So in that case then, how do we get the new resources? Go and talk to all the agencies and see how they might partner with us. Rather than thinking NSF is the way that we're going to solve problems, let's see how NSF can be one cog in the wheel that actually can solve problems at a much broader and a larger scale. So in the first iteration, of institute launch, we had 2 institutes fully funded by none other than US Department of Agriculture. Okay? You would have thought, oh, maybe NASA, maybe NIH, maybe DARPA, maybe other DOD. Okay, maybe you would have thought those are the companies, I mean the agencies that would be interested. But it was USDA, they fully funded it. But they gave NSF the opportunity to be able to run the competition and choose the best ideas so that we might build the future of smart agriculture across the nation as one other thematic topic. Of course, Department of Transportation, Department of Homeland Security, others partnered in a minor way. So in the first round of 7 institutes, we had 20 states covered. Second round, I know I have only 5 minutes, second round, I said, let's go and get even more partnership money. Let's get more agencies involved. Let's get industry involved. A consortium of Microsoft, Intel, Google, Accenture, okay, and Amazon. So we had $20 million investment, and we said, now let's think of that as one extra institute, if you may. Not necessarily that focus, but that, that resource is being available. So we ended up funding 11 institutes because we got 6 more funded by partners. So the 11 plus 7 in the first round, 18 institutes now span 40 states and the District of Columbia. We are now in the 3rd iteration of institutes. We are about to announce the results. And I'm confident that it would span every state of the union. So what I'm trying to say here is every one of us have to have the intentionality and the intensity if you really want AI. That's the first point I want to make. The second point, in another forum that they asked me to talk about AI, I said AI is actually access and inclusion, not just artificial intelligence. We have to bring everybody into the fold. Let's not make the same mistake with technology that we did with other technologies. It will be a missed opportunity and we will not realize the full potential. So access inclusion should be the AI initiative. And I can talk about that more later. In the interest of time, I'll stop there. The third and the most important thing, which you all know already, AI is not about the technology alone. In fact, it's a lot more about the other disciplinary inspirations. Particularly, at NSF, we have the Social Behavioral Economic Sciences Directorate, Humanities, the Arts. So how do you fuse all the disciplinary inspirations so that the AI problems that we are unearthing and the new frontiers of what we want to solve and therefore make an impact is much more of the interdisciplinary nature or the fusion of those disciplines' nature. So these are 3 things that I think I would posit as some concepts that we might want to think about and talk about in this forum, assuming that's of interest to you. Thank you. Sorry I took a little bit longer. That's what happens when you invite professors. I'm sorry.
I'm going to hand it over to Professor Sandeep Verma.
Thank you, Nandini. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our visitors and distinguished visitors from NSF. It's such a great opportunity for all of us talking about AI and how to generate a robust workforce for artificial intelligence and the cooperation between the 2 nations. If you look at the evolution of structured initiative in India, I think it started in 2018 with National Strategy for Artificial Intelligence. And that was a document that we were offered or we generated, which really was the foundation to do things in future. And more recently, last year, we prepared an approach document to implement the national strategy by creating a document which is responsible AI. So now the movement has started. We have become aware that a very structured approach towards bringing artificial intelligence to our workforce, to our institutions, has to happen before we can realize the full potential of this particular technology and how to intertwine it with our national missions, our national aspirations, and where we want to be in, say, year 2050, right? So if you look at what we have been trying to do is that we are now a bit late in the game, I mean, with a document that came in 2018. But what we have done in the meantime is created at least 2 very big mega missions in India. One which was labeled as Cyber Physical System, which had enough component of AI and robotics and so on and so forth, which put in about 3,600 crores of rupees, creating this technology innovation hubs, and one of the architects is sitting right here, and that really allowed us to move forward in a very structured way to create the right kind of footprint in about 20 different technology innovation hubs. Now, having said this, I would like to sort of pick up where Panch sort of emphasized that we are very keenly aware of this digital divide that can happen in India as we try to propel ourselves into the future with the right kind of technology. Because here in India, of course, most of us realize that the population of about 50 million students between the age group of 14 to 18, they are interspersed in all kind of, geographical boundaries. I mean, there are rural schools, state universities, central universities, higher educational institutions. So how to bring them all together, not to miss anybody who has true potential to develop something significant, that has not escaped our attention. And that's where much of the effort at the moment is going on, as one vertical where you would have high-end research being accomplished in IITs and IISc and such famed institutions. But to create the right kind of workforce, we are acutely aware that the revolution has to start at the school level. And here I would like to bring in, and perhaps we'll have chance to discuss a bit more while we discuss here, that we are now introducing AI as a curriculum subject in class 9th standard onwards. And a lot of inputs were taken from science ministries, a lot of information was provided to our education ministry that how curriculum could be developed, the right kind of talent can be nurtured, of course not really pressured in any which way, but the talent can be nurtured so that these students, 40 million plus students from the age group of 14 to 18, who are going to be your workforce for the future, when they enter colleges, when they enter undergraduate institutions or postgraduate studies, they are the ones who are going to be our stakeholders. So having said this, the curriculum development, including the money that is being put by Department of Science and Technology, including my agency, which is Science and Engineering Research Board, we are explicitly creating centers where artificial intelligence could be used for specific purposes such as Earth systems modeling. So we are going to create several centers on Earth systems modeling. We have hundreds of projects running in a little scattered way, starting from the idea brought by investigators, how AI could be used in their specific domain, right? And finally, what I would like to point out is that with all this knowledge base that we have, and the prowess and the talent in this special technology area, we are poised to bring the right kind of workforce in next 10 to 15 years. Bring it to the world, bring it to India. Not only we benefit, but the talent can be used elsewhere to address problems of significant interest. And that is one emphasis point for us, that we have now separated out not just cyber-physical system domains, but also how this knowledge can be diffused into what are called as sectoral application hubs. So if you start all the way from agriculture to law to social justice to medicine, well-being, transportation, security or internal security. So all these sectoral hubs or sectoral applications can be addressed by artificial intelligence, and that is the workforce India would like to have for future. That is the workforce we would like to put taxpayers' money so that the workforce generated not only is going to give us responsible AI, or which is more responsive towards the citizenry, the society, but also towards national missions and global goals across this, across all the nations. So this is where I stop, Nandini, and we'll continue. Thank you.
Mr. Gopalakrishnan, we've heard from the two government sides, so we'd love to hear your perspectives.
Sure. Thank you. Let me also add my welcome to Professor Panchnathan, his entire team from NSF, and all of you. It's wonderful to be part of this. I believe this is a very important milestone in our two nations working together. And that's what I'm going to focus on. both of you talked about what US is doing, what India is doing, and we are doing a lot. And we could do a lot more. We could do a lot more because, as it was pointed out, it's multidisciplinary. It impacts AI, machine learning, impact of data, impacts every single one of us. And that awareness of the role AI is going to play, I think it's something that every citizen, every person now needs to be aware of. Because if you're using a mobile phone, if you're using Google Maps, or if you're using anything today, in the background there is AI actually taking decisions for you. And you better understand the implications of it, the limitations of it, and how widespread the use of it. Now, having said that, why do I say collaboration is important? Global collaboration is important, especially between both our countries. Every problem that we can think of, every large problem that we can think of is global in nature. And India represents 20% of the world's population, one of the largest economies in the world. And so when you look at development, India is yet to develop, and hence can we develop in a sustainable, affordable, inclusive manner that Professor Panchanathan talked about. This was not actually the development model of the 20th century, unfortunately. But today, it's an imperative for us to think about a development model that is affordable, inclusive, that covers the 7 billion people in the world rather than the top 10% of the world. So problems are global, solutions have to be global, India has to be included. When you look at data for, let's say, health care and things like that, India again represents 20% of the world's population, a diverse population. So clearly, any solutions that you come up with in healthcare will have to be trusted with 20% of the world's population. Again, there is a need to include India in the work. Now, when I look at US, a lot of the research, a lot of the entrepreneurial efforts in bringing AI to market, solutions to market, because of its lead in research as well as in entrepreneurship and funding happens in the US. So on one side you have the depth in research, the depth in entrepreneurship and the funding. On the other side, where are these solutions required today? That's India. Where are these solutions required for creating new development models? That's India. So clearly, we need to figure out how we can collaborate better in making this happen. The next point is, we are discussing about talent. And where is this talent available abundantly? Again, that's in India. Whether that talent migrates to the US or stays here in India, one of the places where talent is available in abundance in India. And so, again, we need to, if a new tool, a new technique, a new paradigm has to be introduced into education, I believe that it has to be introduced in India, and it has to be introduced right from school, as we are planning to do. And we need to coordinate and cooperate between the two nations to do that. So, for example, today, we talk about train the trainer programs, right? I would really look at, train the trainer happening from professors in the US coming here, seeding these programs, accelerating the growth of these sectors, etc. I can later on talk about visiting professors at IISc from the US where we are seeding, growth of new sectors like brain sciences and things like that. The idea was to seed people from the US who had labs, etc., to come here and grow that sector here in India. So that's something we need to do. We need to make sure that when we do research, data from India is available. That may require us to strategically think about joint research programs, because there is some concern about data being available on a global scale. So we have to build trust between both the countries and make this data available for research, etc. So we need to think about how can we do that. And below that is harmonization of data, right? The data is only going to be as good as whether it's going to be used properly or not. So we need to think about harmonization of this data. We need to think about how this data is collected, etc. And I firmly believe that every research program now we do in India must actually look at global standards, must look at global templates and things like that, so that we can be part of the global ecosystem. Curriculum, again, we need to be part of the global ecosystem. There is no need to reinvent the wheel, but we can actually jumpstart these programs by collaborating together. And last but not the least, I strongly believe, and this is to my colleagues in the US, for every $5 spent in the US, if you spend $1 in India, we can double the research output. We should take advantage of that. Nothing, because it's, the reason for that is it's a lower cost economy. So any philanthropy I meet, I tell them, if you spend $5 in the US, spend $1, we will double the research output, right? We need to get this message across to all the funding agencies. And we need to figure out how we can work together to accelerate the solutioning that we need. This is common good for the entire world. It benefits the entire world. So how can we work together to work smartly, to work effectively, efficiently in doing this work? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gopalakrishnan.
Thank you. Let me welcome Professor Panchanathan back home. And I hope you keep coming back home many times in the future. On behalf of IIC, let me welcome all of you formally. It's great to have all of you here, especially the team from NSF. Since, this was supposed to throw up some provocative ideas, let me sort of play the devil's advocate here and, throw some, especially in the relationship between universities and big tech companies, which plays a very crucial role in AI. So one question I would like to ask is the influence of big tech AI companies on university research too much? Because the funding from big tech companies for university research is growing rapidly, and universities also need this money. It's not that universities can do without this money. So there's a lot of interest here in getting money from the industry. But at some point, when you look at the training of the workforce from the university side, if you're working mainly with big tech companies, obviously, you're also going to follow their agenda, and does it bias the whole area of AI research towards that area? And coming similarly, another reason why people would like to work with companies is availability of data. And the availability of data would be highest with many of these big tech companies. Even governments may not have that much data. There again, you're training your future workforce on the data generated by companies. So should one again see whether there should be some sort of balance there, just like you have, pharma companies, etc. You have a patent which expires after some time, and then anybody can use it. Just a wild thought, can you have some time limit beyond which the companies make available that data freely to all the academic researchers, so that you have an equivalent of a patent regime for data availability to academic researchers? Because without this sort of amount of data, the real research that you can do in an academic setting, you cannot just work on toy problems. You have to work on real problems. But then you also don't want the diversity that the university brings about to be lost. And that diversity will be lost if you are only adhering to data coming from companies. So that is again a matter of concern. So I think we should discuss mechanisms of how to address this issue of how do you make the data available to academic researchers, to students, in a way that doesn't harm the companies, of course, because they have invested so much money in that, but also benefits. I think in the long term, even companies will benefit if there is this democratization of data availability. And yet another area of concern is that many big tech companies are hiring the top researchers from the universities with very large salaries. So even US schools are unable to compete with the big tech companies. Are the companies killing the goose which lays golden eggs? Because where is the future workforce going to come from? It's going to come from the universities. And if they take away all the best researchers to the companies, who's going to train the future workforce? So this again, something I think the companies also should think about. Maybe again, I know that in US you have some cases where the faculty spends 6 months in the university and 6 months in the big tech company. But again, there should be a balance where I think the companies also need to realize that it's in their long-term benefit. For the long-term benefit, they should also invest in making sure that talent is retained, the top talent is also retained in the university. Because it's only in the university you will have this diversity of thinking, new ideas coming up without any preset, interest, agenda, and so on. So after all, many of these companies came out of universities. So I think we should preserve that ability of universities to generate such new ideas, generate new companies, and that will happen only if talent is also allowed to be retained in the universities without the industries taking up everybody because of the huge salaries. So these are some of the concerns that I think one can discuss. These are not things to be alarmed about, but these are areas I think if both the tech companies, funding agencies, and the universities all work together, we can find very good solutions which will then benefit every one of us. So yeah, let me stop there.
Thank you so much, Professor Rangarajan. I'm going to piggyback from your comment to a question for Professor Dr. Panchanathan. You talked about the influence of tech companies and the whole notion of AI for social good. And so I'm going to ask you, Professor Panchanathan, you have championed diversity. I mean, I know this is something you're really passionate about. You talk about it all the time. How do we take what Professor Rangarajan said and your views about diversity and argue that we need a more diverse workforce across gender, race, and in India, so many other dimensions? And if you can sort of talk about challenges and opportunities for India and maybe some of what agencies can do to sort of address some of these issues, that would be great.
Thank you, Anthony. That's a very good question. So let's take another AI as an acronym of advancing innovation as AI. So for me, it's very plain and simple. Innovation is only possible when you have diversity of thought, diversity of experiences, diversity of context, of course, diversity of ideas. So we only seem to focus on one of those slices at best. This is an unacceptable future if you really want to advance innovation. So plain and simple, therefore, we need to make sure that if we don't consciously build a diverse workforce or a diverse mindset or a diverse way of looking at problem sets, I think we will really not capture the full potential of AI, for that matter, anything at large. So that's hopefully that's a good starting point. Now to the point that you had mentioned about academia and industry, it is not one versus the other, and you nicely said that. In the United States, we want to see if they can share, spend some time there, spend some time here. When I came to NSF, I said one of the things that I really wanted to build was this concept of Bell Labs everywhere. Okay? Bell Labs was a great construct, right? And you know this very well. We were, you're from there. So what it achieved was essentially people with academic mindsets, people with industry practitioner mindsets, not wearing any labels, but fusing and working and therefore generating these unbelievable ideas. But even more importantly, it made possible talent, inspirations, which was at the fusion. That is what we're missing right now. Is either it is in industry or in academia. Episodically here and there we connect. So what we need is these few centers of excellence. And if you have these few centers of excellence, then this mindset that we have, which is how are we going to attract, I think this is a problem that we can tackle head on, that it is not this versus that, it is this and that, and what kind of disruptive models of academia can be built for the future, where it therefore does not become, oh, I can get more money here, I'll get only less money here, I like the idea of having students there, but I don't like to have the students there. That should not be the way in which we think about the future of how academia moves forward. So for a provocative thought is, can we do that? So that's one thing that I wanted to share in that context. Again, to address your question, Nandini, I go back to what Chris said. Chris, I have thought about this quite a bit. It is not that India has all these things and United States has all of everything. It's in fact, I argue the following. We have a number of things to learn from each other through shared contexts. Without shared context and without understanding each other's context, again, we will not holistically solve problems. There is much to learn, as you said, from the United States for India, as much as US to learn from India. And India to learn from the US. And that's why I agree with you. This partnership is not one doing good for the other. That is a win-win proposition. And so I just want to underscore that. And wherever I go in global partnerships, I talk about that. And so one shared context, let me bring that up to address your question, is we both suffer. We both suffer that we are so elitist in our way we think about institutions, right? What is the badge of honor today in institutions, right? The badge of honor is if 10,000 students applied and I accepted one, I am better than the other institutions which accepted two. That is the badge of honor. Exclusion is the badge of honor. How can we have talent and ideas that are democratized, harnessed, harvested, inspired, motivated, and contributing to society and making opportunities possible if this is how we are going to address the future? This is perverse in my view. The job of a university, I would argue, or any educational institution, is not to exclude, but to include and then succeed. I often say, what is so great about taking a diamond and polishing it and sending it outside as a pride of honor or a badge of honor? Take the rocks and make them into diamonds. That is the badge of honor. So we need to fundamentally rethink educational institutions. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is this mindset that somehow research-based education is the only way. I'm not saying that we all think that way, but I'm just challenging the notion. We need to look at community colleges. In the United States, I've said, NSF's focus is going to be intensely on minority-serving institutions. Tribal colleges, historically black colleges and universities, Hispanic-serving institutions, technical colleges. Every one of those are important. So, other day I was talking in a forum on quantum, and they were telling me what is the greatest challenge that quantum has. It is not the materials. It is not the computing ideas. Yes, they are all challenges. But the major challenge that is faced by quantum industries today is they don't have skilled technical workforce. Code word, non-PhD types of quantum researchers, non-university educated quantum people. That's what it is. And so if you're really serious about building inclusion, access, really serious about solving problems, whether it is climate change or eliminating poverty, or even the present moment at hand of predicting and solving pandemics in a proactive way rather than a reactive way, and building resilient futures for anything and everything, we better watch out. These are fundamental problems and mindsets that we possess today that if we don't get out of, that doesn't mean that great institutions like Indian Institute of Science or Stanford don't have a role. Please don't take it that way. That alone is not enough. Another necessary but not sufficient. And therefore, there is a responsibility for institutions like IISc, like Stanford, like ASU, the institution I came from, to mentor, to partner, to include other institutions so they might be successful too. That success for a faculty member is not defined by whether I got my faculty position at IIT or IISc. That I can be successful if I'm in a state university. I was talking to the Minister of Education yesterday, Mr. Pradhan, and we were sharing this, that success can be anywhere. And that people feel that that's not the badge of honor. The badge of honor is what are you doing, not where are you. So this is a common problem, Chris, both in the United States and in India. We have a shared context. We have a shared problem. We have a shared challenge. Therefore, we need to no doubt work together to solve it. It is a mindset of, I can solve your problem, whether it is IITs going to a small technical college or whether it is United States coming to India, it doesn't matter what it is. That is not going to solve the problem. It is how we partner, how do we collaborate with a mindset of working together. I'm sorry, I'm a professor. Every answer I'm going to say, I'm sorry, I'm a professor, that is my DNA. But I just want, when you said provocateur, I'm just now starting to get excited. Okay?
It's great, thank you so much. So Sandeep, I'm going to ask you to follow Dr. Panchanathan and think about the context of India and now our new education policy and also government initiatives. How can we build on, in India, AI is just starting out. How can we avoid, as somebody else said earlier, the mistakes we've made in other disciplines like computer science, no offense to anybody in the room, where we've excluded. How can we avoid that now? School is a great, but are there other initiatives that you as SCRB secretary or the government or NEP can address?
So I think what has been realized that the workforce or these cutting edge technologies, as Panch pointed out, the revolution has to start early on and has the right kind of inclusion from all sections of society, as well as, students coming from elite schools or public schools, or they are state-owned schools. So all these stakeholders or these students, they deserve the right kind of opportunity. So what NEP proposes is, a multilingual education. It is also proposing education for everybody and taking the right and the right kind of technologies to these students, so they are enabled enough to study alone and they can they can get success or they can excel in the future. So having said this, what is going on is that the curriculum are being amended with the help of specialists. There are teacher training programs that are being put in place because these special topics or topics of the future require the right kind of trained individuals who can go to these schools and bring out the right kind of, or give out the right kind of information to students. Now, what I also found when we go to these institutions or state universities, that the pandemic has brought in a great reset for all of us. What has been now realized that education need not be restricted to going to a college, having a physical presence of a teacher. What I have also found in many of these institutions, that the remote teaching or going to digital classrooms, going to these courses, online courses, where you do not have the right kind of professors or right kind of teachers to teach you. Students are learning through online education programs, and they are equipping themselves to make their, to make themselves aware of what is the future of education, future of science and technology, and these cutting edge areas that are coming up. And many of these institutions, actually, some of us would know about it, they are actually providing free access to the best online courses in data science, in artificial intelligence, machine learning, which students are using, exploiting these opportunities in their free time, accessing the right kind of courses, course material online, and preparing themselves. Because India is a big country. There are a lot of, 1.45 million schools all across India. Just imagine having such kind of cutting edge technologies and their, pedagogy of these educational input for these students. It's impossible if you leave out IITs, ISCs, and certain institutions who are good at teaching, you simply cannot cover all these school students and who deserve. And as it was being pointed out, everybody has to come together. So what really has to happen now, and it is happening, that these students and the schools themselves and universities themselves are encouraging students to go for these online certifications, courses, as well as make themselves aware of what else is there to be taught in the absence of right teachers in their own school premises. So this is going to be one important factor, NEP aside, which is going to be very useful as we chart out the future. NEP has access to curriculum development, and of course, IITs have come together to modify the curriculum at school level. As I mentioned, that class 9th onwards, courses are, or lectures or lessons are being introduced in the textbook. And what we anticipate, that as the movement goes forward, as everybody gets stoked by the fire that there is this technology which is of the future, which deserves closer attention, having revolutionized, IT sector, say about 30 years back, we are looking forward with the right kind of emphasis in schools, in universities, through NEP and through very directed interventions of Ministry of Education to make students aware, equip them so that inclusion is there. There is no divide between schools, public schools versus other schools, and we can, ensure these students are well equipped to be the future of workforce. I mean, in artificial intelligence.
Thank you so much, Dr. Verma. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gopalakrishnan. I have a question for you which sort of combines what Dr. Panchanathan said. You brought up India's population, 20% of the world. You've been sort of at the leading edge of creating the IT revolution in India. With AI, some of these issues around ethics, fairness, privacy are going to play a critical role if we're implementing these new technologies. Do you have some thoughts for folks from academia and industry here? Because I think that's going to play a huge role in both workforce as well as the tools that come out. So, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I will take a brief attempt at the question that was asked, and then I'll come to this. See, some experiments are being tried in India in some institutes like IITs and IIScs to relook at education. Education typically till now has been single entry, single exit. Okay, you join at the beginning, the first year, you get a degree and you come out. But why not look at multiple entry, multiple exits, right? You can bring credits and join at middle, and you can also exit, and if you exit with certain number of courses, maybe you get a diploma. If you, have more number of courses, maybe you get a higher degree, and if you fulfill all the requirements of an IISc or IIT, you actually then get a degree which says it's a degree from IISc or IIT Madras or any other IIT and things like that. So multiple entry, multiple exits. This is an experiment. This now works because we are now getting used to online education also. So you can now have classrooms of, let's say, 1,000 students or 10,000 students. Let's say all engineering students can actually join a course at IISc. They go through the program, and if they meet all the requirements of a regular student at IISc, at the end of the program, they get an IISc degree. Otherwise, based on their capability, qualification, etc., they will actually get a diploma or a certificate. Let's say they finish 3 courses, they get certificates on those 3 courses. I think we need to relook at education. We also need to relook at education because education is lifelong. Continuing education is a given now. So how are our institutes going to play a role there? Now, to answer your question, clearly we need to bring in awareness of these technologies in law schools. We need to bring in awareness of these technologies in our humanities and liberal arts colleges and things like that, because their perception about the needs of the society, their understanding of the implications of this technology are going to be very important. So it's just not about core faculty of trained in AI in deep, in depth, but we need actually people with multidisciplinary skills, including industry skills. So if you want to solve a problem in, let's say, traffic management, you need to understand, the issues related to, city planning, issues related to, the management of a city, issues related to the social and dimensions of, is the traffic caused by school-going children or traffic caused by office-going children? So you need to understand the context very clearly. So you need to bring that into the problem-solving domain, and they need to know. So city planners, etc., need to know that AI can be a tool that they can use. Very similar to that, we need the legal fraternity understand the new challenges posed by AI and things like that. If a decision is being made by an AI machine at the back end, and if that decision impacts somebody adversely, can they approach a court, and who is now liable? Of course, this is a well-known problem, but the solution will not come, I believe, only from tech people, but it will come from other disciplines and things like that. So we need to train other disciplines. We need to train government officials. How many of our because at least in India, bureaucrats actually are journalists. They're general managers, and they can get shifted from one time in public health to another time managing transportation department, and the third time, managing agriculture, right? They just get moved around. So they all need to be equipped with knowledge of the impact of emerging technologies and being able to legislate around these things. One more point around this I will talk about, and Professor Rangarajan talked about making data available, and his suggestion on a time limit beyond which, a expiry date for data. Very similar to that is making data available for research and public good. I think we need to have a mechanism for making data available. I chaired the non-personal data governance framework for Government of India. One of our recommendations is to make data available for public good and for economic development, entrepreneurship, startups, etc. So we don't take away the data, but access to data under certain conditions must be available for public good. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gopalakrishnan. So taking some of the points you said, I'm going to ask the question to Professor Rangarajan. You run one of the sort of elite institutions that Dr. Panchanathan talked about. You're also very interdisciplinary. I know you're setting up new programs. So how can institutions such as IISc really help ramp up some of these multidisciplinary areas where AI is being used? And how do we bring folks from the social sciences? We have someone from the National Law College here today at this gathering, so it's great. So how do we build interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary teams to solve some of these challenges?
Yeah, it's, I think, a real challenge building multidisciplinary teams because first the basic problem is everybody has to have a common language. That itself becomes a roadblock whenever you start any of these multidisciplinary conversations. So I think we are also trying that. We have a whole division of interdisciplinary sciences where we encourage interdisciplinary research, and even in AI we are introducing a new BTech program which will take in elements from all disciplines and where students can do projects, may biology or chemistry or whatever. And also we are wishing to collaborate. We have already initiated talks with the National Law School here in Bangalore, where they can teach our students some law, and we teach their students data science and so on. So that is something which has been initiated. And I think not just at this level, but that interdisciplinarity has to percolate down, not just from universities, but also at school levels. And there we are thinking of starting a BSc, B.Ed program for training teachers, science teachers and so on. There we hope we'll give them a very integrated curriculum where they learn all the sciences, they learn new pedagogical techniques, and so they will become better teachers in schools. Because unless you strengthen the school education, the future of India is not going to be, very good. So I think that is a big lacuna in India. So, and if that interdisciplinary thinking percolates down to the teachers and they impart that sort of education even at the school level, even though they are constrained by syllabus, but at least the thinking about those things will really help. So I think the only way, institutions like in India, the problem is institutions are created, they're not full-fledged universities, you have specialized institutions, so it becomes a greater challenge to implement interdisciplinary education in India. But the way we can overcome that is through these collaborations with others like National Law School or the National Institute for Advanced Studies also on campus, which deals with humanities. So unless we collaborate and do it, we are not going to be able to really impart a very multidisciplinary education.
Thank you so much. This has been fascinating, and I know everybody has a tight schedule. We were supposed to go up to 11:10, so I'm going to ask the four of you, are you willing to take a couple of questions from the audience? Absolutely, okay. Anybody have a question? Somebody's before. And if you could keep it short, we would really appreciate it.
Domain knowledge. I actually teach machine learning and I do system modification, things like that in mechanical engineering and civil engineering. The reason I say this is this. There's so much emphasis on data science, but domain knowledge is equally important. In fact, it's more fundamental, in my opinion, because you have to apply some of these techniques, which are not completely new. Statistical learning has been there for a long time. In fact, Professor Rangarajan works in that field to sort of bring these ideas, which all of you have talked of, but never forget that we have to be grounded in fundamentals. That is extremely important. What I do in my own teaching, I teach advanced classes in these areas. The reason is we emphasize so much on AI and machine learning and tech and all that, but other areas are getting affected. Physics, chemistry. People are going away into data science. They think that data science is something that they have to gravitate towards. So I want to hear your thoughts about that, because it's critical, because we're going to lose domain knowledge at the expense of some of these, which is fine in my opinion, but I think both have to be emphasized.
Who would like to see this hot potato?
So, if you think of AI as a vertical, then you will feel like it is taking away from something. If you think of AI as a horizontal thread that interweaves everything, that is, AI becomes better because of chemistry and physics becomes better because of AI. It's how we design our thinking of AI. Yes, there will be techniques that we need to learn, which is the vertical part. But if you just stay at that level of what AI is or data science is, then again, it is not only a missed opportunity, but it is a mistaken notion. So we need to start thinking about that as having a horizontal and a vertical component. That's how you will not lose people, but in fact, you will draw people who will then go back to the disciplinary domains and do even richer and better work. This is how we are starting to think about this. So agencies like NSF, because we have an 8.8 billion annual budget, we have some influence. And so the influence is through our own thinking being rewired so that we might then propose solutions in that manner. So, much longer answer, but I will stop right there.
Yeah, so can we give, just in the interest of time, we have another question here. So, I'm sorry. Maybe you can carry on the conversation.
Thank you again. And I think I'd like to touch upon the structural challenges that may exist in India. In the universities in the US, there's natural collision of disciplines. We walk the same hallways, we live in the same buildings, and that's where serendipity happens. Whereas in India, we are structurally siloed in sciences and engineering and technology and social sciences, where even from Bangalore, my colleague here was saying that it's an hour traffic jam to come here. How do we overcome for that interdisciplinarity or fusion of disciplines, as Dr. Pancharathan, you mentioned, to happen? What can we do?
I have answers to everything.
So I think this experiment has now been done in many institutions where they are giving major and minor degrees, especially in IITs, for example, where they are explicitly allowing students to take a core discipline, say mechanical engineering, and they could then take physics as a minor, right? So they are trying to break silos, but the changes are slow to come by at times. There is inertia in terms of teaching, in terms of getting the right kind of credits that would accrue over a period of time to eventually give you a degree. But this problem, I think, has been recognized by most institutions which are, say, technology-oriented, say IITs, for example, that they are bringing in minor degrees which are enabling students to sort of gravitate out and explore other disciplines which can bring value to, say, we have something in civil engineering and environmental sciences. So you bring in an allied science or a discipline that accentuates your original degree or that augments it. So such experiments are going on, but you are right. They are limited to some top institutions. We still have the ability to modify their curriculum compared to schools, state schools, etc., who are very slow to change. Yeah, I hope that answers.
I think we're running out of time.
One quick intro. See, we need more full-fledged universities which are providing all disciplines, including liberal arts, humanities, etc. And we need to make sure that our high-end institutes like IISc, IITs, etc. must actually now become full-fledged universities. You know, we have to do that, and I think attempts are now being made to look at medicine, to look at, you know, more focus on liberal arts and things like that. So we need to do that. Otherwise, what you said is very true.
Can I present a sort of a different point of view also? These are very, very important, these points. What do you mean by corridor? Right? We have to rethink the corridor. The corridor today with COVID is you have a corridor from here to Japan and the United States, like that. So we have to rethink how you think about this concept of corridor, that somehow neighborhoodness is about cohabitation. Yes, there is some value in that, but we have to also rethink about how we cohabitate. With AR and VR and immersive visualization and all of these technologies, we should rethink what experiences mean. So there's a lot more to be done there too, and leveraging the technology for rethinking what collaboration means. So in addition to these majors, minors, and rethinking paradigms, we also have to start to challenge ourselves as technologists. What are we doing in terms of building the metaverses that can do these things in very interesting ways?
I think I know everybody's out of time, so I know if we had the opportunity and they were willing, we'd take more questions, but in the interests of...
Just make a quick comment, please. I'm at Ashoka University, and when it comes to the concept of majors, minors, and concentrations, we've actually implemented from day one all three. People can do a joint major in CS and entrepreneurship, CS and maths. They can do a minor and a major in any combination, and a concentration in a third one if they so wish. And we are really looking forward to the 4-year program that will give us room to do more such courses. So it's not that it can't be done. We had the advantage that we started much later. But again, the other thing that I would like to mention, training the workforce. Professor K. Vijay Raghavan allowed me yesterday to tell the audience, he's accepted a position as chair of our Science Advisory Board. And the first initiative he wants to do is exactly what you said, sir. He's talked with Professor Sanjeev Arora at Princeton, and in December we are organizing a program to train 150 lecturers from all over the country.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This concept of pipeline, to what he said, pathways, that you exit, you enter, you exit, you enter, you exit, you re-enter, all through your life. And that's the future of learning and education. You know.
Thank you so much. We have, if you want to do a 30-second challenge to this group that's going to be visioning the rest of today and tomorrow, 30 seconds to sort of inspire them to really take action. So start with Dr. Anurajan down and 30 seconds.
Oh, I think I would say, how do you build your AI workforce that is going to be, well aware of the day-to-day, the ethical challenges, the legal challenges which AI faces, that is going to be, the challenge going forward, I think.
Well, since you're here for 2 days, you're stuck, right? So here is a thought. Don't sit next to somebody that you know already and what they do, okay? Just choose every hour of your session somebody completely different. Talk to them and ask them what they are doing. Even within this, I was just counting. I always count audience numbers. So the last time I counted, a few people came in and out. So about 75 to 80 people are here. So if 80 of them in several pairs over the next 2 days, I'm telling you, you will come up with unbelievable conceptualization ideas. Right there, you will find the nucleation of unbelievable new concepts and ideas that will come out. So don't waste this opportunity. Don't wait for something magical to happen. The magic can happen in the next 2 days.
So I was in a conclave with Dr. Kasturi Rangan to commemorate the 2nd anniversary of NEP 2020. One challenge that was discussed is that how to catalyze learning or experiential learning for these 40 million plus students who are between 14 to 18. And that was a challenge given to us. Scratch your mind, come up with the right ideas how, as Panch pointed out, AR, VR and immersive learning can reach these schools so that those 45 or 40 to 45 million students, they could become excited about future. So that, I think, for all of us would be a challenge, especially in India, and we seek your intervention or your ideas. Thank you.
So I would challenge you to think about if, let's say, you have to design education, if you have to design an educational institution today in the age of technology, how would you design this? Because the problem in front of all of us is talent, right? And can we rethink about the role of the university without losing the depth, without losing the creation of new knowledge, innovation, etc., but leveraging the tools of modern, modern era. How can we redesign that? And can we come up with new models? Can we look at drawing faculty from across, not just industry, but other disciplines, but look at US, India, other parts of the world? And can we use also, we want to reach out to people in their vernacular languages, etc., but can we use automated translation? Probably it will advance automated translation. So can we use tools like that to rethink education, etc.? We need to think outside the box and push the limits on what we can do. And if we can launch some pilots, I think it will be wonderful.
Thank you so much. We're going to ask our 4 distinguished guests to help us with Itihasa. So we've been working quite hard on a volume that I will ask. This is a survey of Indian institutions on their AI and data science workforce. It's a collaboration between the Itihasa group here, and so we're asking for your help in launching this, and I hope this will make some great reading for the audience. So you get to open the book. That's light reading for your flights. And I think now I'll ask Rajesh to propose a vote of thanks, and then ST and we'll keep the vote of thanks, everything short. So thank you so much.
Professor Panchanathan, Professor Sandeep Verma, Mr. Chris Gopalakrishnan, Professor Rangarajan, also Dr. Nandini Kannan. I think all of you have given us very provocative thoughts. You have laid out challenges. You've also given us some possibilities and also told us some things to keep in mind as we build these AI frameworks. For example, I'll read out a few. Inclusion, responsible AI, democratization of data, the imperatives, democratization of data, data as a public good, sustainable development, the model of development of the 20th century is no longer viable. What new things can we have? The imperatives, training of young minds, and the university's role in doing this. 45 million students to keep track of. Inclusion rather than exclusion, access, lifelong learning. I think you have given us a lot of things to think about. It's a tall order. I hope that the participants will be able to come up with some way forward, which we will then hopefully implement. Thank you very much. Let's thank the panelists once again for this.
There's tea here, but I don't know what your schedules are like, so. I follow what you say. No, but you hope